Hi, Steve Gillmor. This is the Gillmor Gang, a special edition on the night after of the new announcements about iPad and various other stuff. So we've got an interesting group tonight. Starting to my far right in everything except politics is Keith Teare. Welcome, Keith.
Pleasure to be here, Steve.
To his right, no, it doesn't work politically, but it does work on video, which is his fellow Brit, Kevin Marks.
Hi there. Stage right, I think.
Excellent.
And he is called Marx.
Yes, and Lenin, it would be the Beatle. Okay, in the center screen, the center square, Paul Lind. No, it's Robert Scoble. Oh, boy.
Miley Scoble, God.
We'll never do this again, by the way.
Just don't twerk, please.
I heard this is the Nokia show, right?
Yeah, what's Nokia?
Oh, they announced all sorts of stuff last night.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And and to his stage left or right is CBS News' Dan Farber.
Yeah, good evening. Hello, everyone.
Okay. So all technical problems aside, let's get started. Robert Scoble, what do you think?
Well, let's see. Going through the keynote, there was a new OS, which I literally got like 4 minutes ago, which is looking pretty good so far. We got the Mac Pro, which I want but can't afford. I think Keith Teare will get it way before I do. They had MacBook Pros and some updates to the laptops, right? And then they had these new iPads, which are thinner for the big one, and the Retina that we expected to see. All of this makes me just, I don't know. It's not the Apple where it's going to bring a dramatic new product. In fact, they sort of hinted that a dramatic new product is going to come in 2014, right at the end. But we're going to buy it. I'm going to be in line.
You sound so sad.
Yeah, it's I was thinking about this call, and I was like, why are we doing a call about this just because it's Apple? And then I remembered, yeah, it is Apple that's worthy of doing a call alone. But it's sort of like, I got a new BMW model, and it has, a nicer color paint. It's
far more important than that.
Well, the Mac Pro, I don't know. Is it really?
Yeah, really.
I don't think so. I mean, for their business, yes, it's very important. They're going to make billions and billions of dollars because we're going to stand in line and buy all these things. It just doesn't come up for me. It doesn't come up to the kind of game-changing announcements that I want.
But I don't think we can expect game-changing announcements every 6 months or whatever their cadence is.
Well, it's been 3 years since we've had
what Apple has done and consistently does is not really surprise us, other than they're incredibly consistent and they have a really good formula. And that formula is upgrade the existing well-established products and make sure that they're incredibly polished and they can say things like, it's the best iPad we've ever built. And then number two, continue to create this aura around it by leveraging the retail stores, the online store, and the fact that all the reviews are going to say, the iPad is great, it's a no-brainer, it's not as full-featured as the Galaxy 10.1 or whatever, but, it's just a better product overall. And then you get all the software developers on board, and that's really how Apple continues to win. And I think that they did have a kind of break the mold product, which is the Mac Pro. I mean, it's less than $3,000, and it's probably the most incredible.
Yeah, wait. When you say less than $3,000, yes, the base
model. Base model.
But if you're going to really buy one of those, first of all, they didn't announce the 4K monitors, but they said it supports 4K monitors. And then you're really going to want to upgrade all the accessories, because you that kind of system is for a video editor or a 3D graphics
it's a
person.
professional thing, and probably the average selling price on those is going to be $15,000-$20,000 all in for all the parts and monitors and software and everything else. But somebody spends $15,000 on that system, and the kind of throughput they're getting, they pay for it in a couple weeks.
Well, I think there's another message that was that is a good segue to, which is that early on, Tim Cook made the point, that everybody is changing their laptops into tablets. And he said, well, let me introduce Phil Schiller, because we're going to show you our latest laptops and desktops. And then, so they showed that Apple is still, Apple doesn't believe that it's the end of the desktop or the laptop. It just believes it's a change in the desktop and the laptop, with mobile, tablet, and phone kind of driving a lot of the reasons you would use the desktop and the laptop. So they went and showed the new laptops, which, by the way, have Thunderbolt 2 and have now moved entirely to SSDs, a 1 terabyte SSD. And then they showed the Mac Pro. The Mac Pro is lust-worthy, clearly. And those of us who are out all day, like Robert, taking pictures with videos on cameras, are going to want one of those. And in a way, it was an ecosystem announcement as much as it was an iPad announcement. When they upgraded iLife and iWork, and they showed collaboration, and one of the most irritating things about the last version of iWork was that a keynote made on a tablet was different when you looked at it on a desktop, and they fixed all of that stuff. It feels to me like that it was just a fantastic ecosystem set of announcements that just say, if you stay with Apple across all of the things you need to get done, you're going to be a happy camper, and everyone else is confused. And they showed Google and Microsoft, and I just thought it was the best keynote from Apple that I've seen probably since the iPhone was introduced. And given that Steve wasn't there, that's saying quite a lot.
Really? It's Steve for sure. But I think our expectations are toned down. We're not expecting a groundbreaking keynote. We knew what we were getting with this before we watched it. I mean, we knew that we were going to get a new MacBook Pro. We knew that we were going to get new iMacs, or iPads, and I didn't see anything shocking here. That said, I totally agree with you that Apple is still the king, and this didn't change anything.
I mean, any temptation I might have had to go anywhere else was killed instantly. I was actually at the Chinese embassy during the whole thing. I was driving up to go and get a visa to go to TechCrunch Shanghai, and I watched it in the car on LTE, high def, on my iPhone, coming through the Bluetooth speakers of my car. I turned the car off, took the iPhone, kept watching it with the earphones in whilst I queued up for my visa, paused it whilst I got my visa, which took about 3 minutes, and then walked out, put it back in the car, listened all the way back. The whole thing using Apple stuff, it was awesome.
By the way, did you see me and my son in the keynote?
I'm not sure if I did, because I was.
Yeah, we were there for a split second because they shot us while we were at the New York store buying iPhones.
Oh, awesome! In the video.
So I agree, it's the best keynote ever.
No, I mean, I don't know about everybody else, but I was actually completely impressed by how that team, Schiller, Eddie Q, Federighi, and Cook, as a team across all of their disciplines, completely coordinated. I mean, you know how hard it must be to do that. I thought it was awesome.
Well, and that gets to a point. It's very clear that Apple has a deep bench, and you saw that in the engineering of the Mac Pro, and all the way through the product line. They have a deep bench. It's a different Apple than it was 7 years ago, and I'm coming to terms with that. I actually am really looking forward to the iWatch. I think that's the product, one of the products that they hinted at that's coming in 2014 that is a game-changing or a new product category product for Apple, and that's the kind of thing that gets me hot and bothered about Apple. It's not making it thinner or faster or sexier. I expect that will happen. It's just I want the cool stuff.
You know what?
I want the new thing.
Hang on a second.
I'll
I just want
tell you what
to
I
hang on a
think.
second. I want to get Kevin Marks into this.
Okay.
What do you think?
So there's 3 product lines there. The iPads is necessary catch up. There's some weird stuff there where they left the old one in the lineup, but at $300, which is strangely uncompetitive. The only thing I can think of is this for people who read the newspaper at arm's length and they don't need a Retina one. The laptops is a good and much needed update. Sorry there weren't Retina Airs, but I've ordered a MacBook Pro, so that's obviously appealed to me. The Pro, again, that's something that's been missing for a long time. A lot of the people who edit video professionally have been moving off Mac, partly because the hardware wasn't keeping up, but also because the last release of Final Cut took out a lot of the features that professional video editors need, especially the ones who are trying to cut multi-camera shoots and things like that. So Apple has some catching up to do there. I think the machine is definitely capable of the catch-up. The question is whether Final Cut can deliver the features to bring people back from Avid, because they have been losing out in the actual pro video editing arena to that. So I suspect there'll be another event later where they do push very hard on the 4K screen, 4K editing with the Mac Pro, and that may be why they haven't announced a screen for that yet. So there's my sense is there was a great thing that Simco posted maybe 6 months ago, which was the average selling price of Apple product lines over time. And the fascinating thing was that they were almost straight horizontal lines, because what Apple does is design the products that they can make to hit a price point and sell that. And that's pretty much what we've seen here. They've updated the range so that the price point stays much the same, but the features go up, and they've got a compelling set of offerings at each price point. So their price structure and the stuff they're selling is good.
And that points to the strength of the ecosystem, Kevin, because if you're an Apple fan and you've bought into the ecosystem over the last 6 years like I did, you're probably not going to switch. I mean, I do because I like to play with everything. But normal people don't switch. My dad's going to keep it going down the iPad line forever now, right?
I think it varies. I think they haven't hit the they've tried to have a range of prices in the product line, but really the iPad 2 is there to be sacrificial, so you upsell to the next one, and even that is $300, which is you can get much nicer tablets from many other vendors for that.
Yeah, but when you say much nicer, it doesn't have the apps. The app quality on iPad is way better than Windows. And if you look at the new Windows tablets that came out last night from Nokia, they're really beautiful machines. And the OS itself.
I wasn't thinking Windows so much as Android and
well,
Amazon.
even Android, right? Philip Malone just gave me heck on Twitter and said, "Oh, in 2 days we're going to hear a bunch of stuff from Google, and then we're back in play again for the Google ecosystem." But the apps on Google tablets just are not up to the quality level of apps on iPad. And we talked for months on Gillmor Gang about why, right?
Well, I disagree. I think there's a solid raft of apps on the Google tablets.
They are, but they're not the same quality. I'm sorry. You take any app side by side, the app on the iPad is better overall.
I think there's one exception.
Instagram.
I think.
Sorry.
I was going to say, Kevin, I think that's generally true if you look at things like iMovie or GarageBand or iPhoto and so on. I think there's one app Google has that's actually better than the Apple equivalent, and that's Hangouts, and it's getting better all the time.
Also Maps, but they're shipping that on iPad too.
Yeah, but nobody. Do you really use Maps on an iPad?
No, but
I use my phone for for Maps, right?
I use Maps on this on the Nexus because it sits in the car nicely and it's very high res and it works.
Fair enough.
By the way, I think iCloud and PhotoStream, which got video today, by the way, now with the new iMovie Theater option that comes up on the Apple TV, that is a kind of an understated announcement. I think that's a fairly big thing for the average person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, I had dinner with the guy who started the WB network last night, and we talked at length about the content side of the business, and he parroted Steve Gillmor's points over the last few months that the world is really changing thanks to streaming. I mean, I was at the Consumer Electronics Show hanging out with Panasonic and all these guys who have done all sorts of stuff, and I was like, I haven't had a disc in my hands for years. I watch everything on Apple TV or Netflix or Hulu or YouTube, and we talked about that, and we talked about the difficulties that the consumer electronics industry is going to have as they move to these new 4K TVs or the Ultra HD they call it. Which is 4 times the resolution of a 1080p monitor that I have on my wall. And when you think about the file size or the streaming size of shoving down a 4K file, it's really going to be a struggle for a lot of people in the United States to get that file.
Well, actually, that's a good point. One of the things that was surprising today for me was that the stream was so hard to watch. You had to be running a particular version of Safari. You had to be on Apple to do it. And when I tried it on my Apple machine connected to my TV, it didn't actually play the stream, and I had to go and watch it via twit.tv because they were rebroadcasting it in a format that actually played back. So that was that was disappointing.
It's better than the last time they had a press announcement. We couldn't watch any streaming, right?
No,
because
that's true. Yeah.
Streaming, so at least this time,
well,
they reward the Apple customer.
You have to buy the stuff if you want to be able to.
Yeah, but 10 years ago, when I was doing live streaming for Apple, it played on everything. It played on Windows. It played on whatever was available. And now they've said, no, you have to be running a particular version of Safari.
That's been true. They never used to
shame.
broadcast their announcements live.
They did used to, and then they stopped for a while.
Yeah, like 10 years.
Actually, if you watch it right now, you can watch it in Google Chrome. The keynote is
the playback. Yeah.
Yeah, they're just rewarding. And to be honest, if you're a Windows fan or a Linux fan, are you really going to watch the Apple keynote live? I mean, come on. The faithful are the people who watch the keynote live, or the press does.
No, but I mean that was a marker for who this keynote was aimed at. Definitely, this was definitely playing to the faithful. This wasn't this will convert you from everyone else. Yeah.
My guess is you could have watched it if you'd have grabbed the URL. You could have watched it just at any old QuickTime client.
It worked just fine. On the Apple TV,
even
on
in
the iPhone,
browser,
on
it
the
didn't play for me. It
iPad,
was playing
on my
music for 15
MacBook Air.
minutes.
It worked perfectly on all those devices.
By the way,
Dan Farber, hang on a second. Dan Farber.
Well, I just wanted to note something about the show, Steve. I just upgraded to the Mavericks, and you all sound a lot better tonight. I don't know why. Maybe it's all in my head.
It's the drugs. So, Dan Farber.
It's because it's quieter here in the evening.
Or it's the whiskey.
Yeah. I think that's the reception. Your receptor is sated. Dan Farber, somebody mentioned the press. How do you think the press is coping with the loss of Steve Jobs? Do you think they've gotten over it yet?
Well, I think there's all kinds of press. There's many in the press who weren't even around during that time too much, so they don't have that history. But I think if I look at this event, or I think what everybody has said tonight is, it was a standard Apple event, and I could imagine Steve doing the whole event, in which, hey, we've got these cool new iPads, we've got these cool new MacBooks, we've got this incredible MacBook Pro, and oh, by the way, we are going to give away our software for free. We are not charging anyone to upgrade to Mavericks. I mean, that's a total kind of Steve thing. So I would say that the spirit of Steve, as expressed in that team that was out on stage today, is still there. And I think, as we always like to say, well, if Steve were still there, or whoever is there now, are they going to be able to come up with that next big product that continues this run for Apple? But so far what we've seen is they don't need a big new fancy product introduction to continue the run they're on. They still can have a huge and incredibly profitable business while the Android guys and Windows fight it out on the other side.
Yeah, I think they've got Android on the run right now.
So,
Well,
to me,
not if you
that's-
look at the
to me,
numbers. If you look at the last quarter numbers, where even then where there was the iPad Mini, I think Samsung grew its share from, I think year over year from 7% to 18%, and Apple kind of stayed about the same. But Apple doesn't need to have huge market share,
Right. I mean, the number that
to be a big winner.
the number that Tim Cook used was what was it, 81%?
But
of
the
all
81%
stuff that
has to do with web usage,
usage. Yeah.
not with
Stuff
the
happening.
number of subscriptions or attach rates.
How many Google Play movies have you watched?
Oh, well, I'm not a big movie watcher, but I must say,
How many records have you bought on Google?
I'd like to see.
I've got quite a few on Google.
Really?
I'd like to see Gravity on a 4K.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I mean, I use the other reason I couldn't watch it because my Apple TV got unplugged a month ago, and I didn't rummage around to plug it back in because I swapped it out for the Chromecast because that plays Netflix better and actually interacts better with the other gadgets I've got. So maybe this is because I'm more of a Google shop than an Apple shop now, but that's that may change now. I've just bought a new Mac, but I had no interest in buying any of the iPads.
Well, what does Walt Mossberg mean when he says that the iPhone 5S is the best phone in the world? What does he mean?
With Walt, you can never tell exactly what he's referring to. But
I agree with him. Why is he saying that?
I'll tell you why, because I've used an Android for the last 6 months, and I've been playing with with an iPhone 5S for the last couple of weeks. It's ecosystem. First of all, the apps are almost universally better on an iPhone, and they're smoother, except for the Google ones. And the Google ones, and with some exceptions, there's some contextual apps on Android that aren't on iPhone, but the apps overall are better word for word on Apple's system, and there's a whole bunch of reasons. We talked about that, and then you talk about the quality of the hardware. It just feels nice in your hand. And when Apple started out the keynote and they said, we design products based on what we want you to feel when you use them, and they care about the usage numbers. That's important. They are trying to do stuff that doesn't have rough edges, and Android has rough edges to it. It has more flexibility in a lot of ways, more customization. You can use newer kinds of bleeding edge apps, but it has rough spots to it. And certainly when you look at the depth of the Android product line, the rough spots get worse and worse as you go from the high end phones to the cheap phones, which is what most of their product base is based on. And that's why the usage number, why the entrepreneurs who are building startups tell me that they build for iPhone first, because one, they're holding an iPhone probably, and two, the market is all there. It's not fragmented the way that the Android market is. And we can go on and on about the ecosystem. But I think when he says it's the best phone, you start with the ecosystem, then you look at, it feels nice in your hand.
I think they said it today in the keynote. It's how three things weave together. It's the hardware, it's the software, and it's the service layer in the cloud. And it's the integration across all of their devices of those three things. They got the best hardware. They spend the most time innovating early with the latest technologies. That's probably why they don't have a 4K screen yet, because it's not quite right timing for them. But I bet you pretty soon they'll have the awesomest 4K screen you could imagine to go with that Mac Pro. They're just really, really good at timing their entry at the point when it makes sense and everybody wants it.
What do you think about if you had to buy one today, or if you could buy them today, which would you get, the Mac Mini, the iPad Mini, or the iPad Air?
I'd get the Retina, the mini Retina.
Tim Cook told MG Siegler to stop worrying about it and buy both of them.
Yeah, I kind of can relate to that. The iPad Air looks like a really sweet device.
Yeah.
I'd get if I had to choose between those two, I get the Mini just because the form factor is better and the specs are pretty much the same.
Better for who? You know, if you're a school kid, like my kids, they love the bigger form factor. So for my kids, they will go for the MacBook Air, the iPad Air. If you're talking about me and I have to carry it around with me, I'm torn because there's some advantages to having a bigger screen, and there's a lot of advantages to having the small screen. So it's
Well, the thing is that the small screen has as many pixels now, so it depends on your viewing distance and where you're holding it. Where you're doing it.
My eyes
No,
are getting
the iPad with the Retina display is a good textbook substitute. That's definitely
As
what
they
my son
pointed
uses it
out,
for. It's very handy.
They pointed out that the iPad Air is something you can now use with one hand. So, from my perspective, what they've done is...
Which is a key problem, yeah. They actually showed a shot of somebody holding onto a public transit pole with one hand and the thing in their other hand, which is, that was the use case they missed before they made the Mini. So
what I think they've done is to flip the market on its head. What they've done is they've made an iPad Mini with a Retina display, and then they've made a big iPad Mini, which is called the iPad Air.
That's interesting because the challenge is going to be making sure that when you design your apps, it can cope with that difference in finger size and viewing distance to some extent. But the big thing is the difference in finger size between the two. And what we had with the Mini up to now, from launch until recently, before people started redesigning, was that a lot of the buttons were a little bit too small because they were iPad apps shrunk down.
So Dan Farber, what would you get if you were going to get one?
I would get the Air because my use cases, I'll use it to watch movies, read newspapers, things like that when I'm not in transit so much. And then I'll get the bigger phone that comes out next year if we're going total Apple. And that way you have a 4.7 or 5-inch phone for traveling, and a 10-inch or 9.7-inch iPad for more stationary. And then there'll be the iPad Pro, which will have a built-in keyboard.
You think that they're going to emulate Microsoft?
Yes, and I wrote about this the other day, which is if you look at the numbers, by 2015, tablets are going to outsell PCs, including laptops, which means that business users all over the place are going to be using tablets instead of PCs for their work. So if that's the case and they still need to type, you can certainly carry around a keyboard with you. Or you can do what Microsoft did, which I think is smart, is you have a built-in integrated keyboard that doubles as a cover. So there's no reason, technically, I don't think, why Apple couldn't build a smart cover that has a keyboard.
But there's third-party ones that do that quite reliably.
Yeah,
right, but it's typically what Apple
and they sell them in the Apple
does
Store.
or anybody does is, or Microsoft is, they say, oh well, there's a high attach rate here for keyboards. Why don't we do a keyboard because we can sell it for $100 and make $80 on it?
Well, Apple already is using the store as a distribution method. They go to companies like Oakley and Logitech and whatnot and have them build devices for the store. And they already take home 30 to 60% of anything sold in the store. So, can they make another 30% by making it themselves? Maybe. I think Apple would rather look at it, can we do it way better than Logitech can? And if they can, I think they'll jump into it. But
they already sell a $69 keyboard they make themselves.
Right. But it's this one, right?
And the thing is, you go to the retail store, you go to the online store, and it's just kind of in your face. Would you like to get a keyboard with this?
Yeah. So I nearly agree with you, Dan, but I think it's the keyboard, the device, which is an AirPlay device, and a big screen on the wall or on your desk, and there's no wires between them. And I think you are typing into the mobile device, but the display it can be a big display.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I think the I've stabilized on the iPad Mini with the Logitech keyboard. I rarely use anything else. I actually going back to the MacBook Air if I really want to do any serious typing, which I don't really like doing anyway. So, I think that the Mini is going to be a profoundly popular device for the next 3 months.
You should try pairing an Apple wireless keyboard, a Bluetooth keyboard, with either an iPhone or an iPad, and use the AirPlay feature to be typing on the big screen. Just do that experience and play with it and see how it feels. You're going to be surprised how good that feels.
No, it feels great, but as the MacBook Air starts to approach the functionality of the tablet, it's going to, I'm going to go back up. I'm not going to go back down. There's no reason to. I mean, I use the phone now about 90% of the time, and the other 20% I use the Mini. And with the new one, it'll probably flip back to the Mini, maybe 30 or 40%. I was surprised that they didn't put the thumbprint feature into the Mini.
It makes sense that it's not in there, because I on my Mini I don't open and close the Mini nearly as many times a day as my phone. The phone is much more important to have that fingerprint sensor or a feature like the Moto X has where you talk to it. I don't know. I'd like to hear Dan talk about Made in America, because this is a trend that Motorola and Apple both have been going into, and Apple today announced the Mac Pro is made in America. Do you think this is what do you think is behind this? Is it really that these companies want to be free of China, or are they seeing a coming fight? Because I'd see a coming fight between the American companies and the Chinese companies.
Well, I think that's true, but it's it goes back to the flat world. It's very global, and Apple likes to talk about two things. One is they like to talk about how green they are, and they made that point several times. Every time they introduced a product today, they went through the chart of how carbon neutral and favorable it is to the environment. And then secondly, they talk about Made in America, but Made in America means more about assembly than actually made in America. It's a matter of getting parts and then shipping the parts all over the place and then assembling them in one place.
Isn't there 2,000 people in 20 states, which sounded really weird.
Well, that speaks to the fact that assembly workers in America and assembly workers in China, the differential is closing in terms of cost. The average Chinese salary is rising as the middle class grows and the home market there grows. So the idea of China as a cheap source of labor is receding into the past, and there's no other huge place on the planet that can compete with China. So you may as well bring it back here and use low-cost workers in Texas who actually, on minimum wage, are getting pretty close to what it costs to pay a Chinese worker.
Is this a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I hate economic nationalism anyway. I think we've had 2 world wars largely driven by it. So I actually hate anything which says, British jobs for British workers or American jobs for American workers. I think that's bullshit. In the age we live in, we're all human beings that live on the same earth, and we should just be utilizing our resources in the most clever way on behalf of all of us. So whether it's in America or in China, I don't really care, as long as it's a good decision from a design and delivery point of view.
So another interesting thing that I noticed in quickly perusing TechMeme to see if there was anything other than Apple that was even remotely interesting, there was something to the effect that Microsoft has been testing a Google Glass competitor.
I whatever. Whatever.
I expected that reaction.
Can you guys all mute your mics when you're not talking? Because somebody's, I hear a basketball or something in the background.
It's Keith.
It's Keith, yeah.
And we've already tried to and failed to find the basketball.
It's a Halloween feature, clearly. He's got a haunted house over there. Actually, I wanted to go back a little bit to the making Mavericks free, because that was interesting. That's an enormously sensible move, especially when they're in competition with a bunch of free OSs.
But I mean, Google's made all their operating systems free.
Google's made all the free all the way along. So that's exactly it. So I think this is it's a way of poking Microsoft in the eye as well, but it's also them realizing that the advantage they have with iOS was the ability to upgrade the entire user base very, very quickly, and they could do that with OS 10 too, by removing that friction. And that's the smart move in my book, which is that if they can get the platform that much more uniform and have many more of the Mac users running the latest version, that'll be better for developers too, as well as better for them because they're trying to ship a bunch of new apps. And there was this model in Apple where other bits of Apple had to be profit centers too, and that was fairly toxic to software at some points. And the fact that they've stopped doing that, and they did the same with the iPlay apps as well, is a positive move. That makes a lot of sense to me. The other thing that it will do though is that it puts more price pressure on developers on the platform, because if Apple is Apple, by charging a certain amount for some of their apps, set an anchor point of price in the App Store on both platforms, and without that, with their stuff being free, that will increase the downward pressure on app prices in the store and potentially move to more apps that are free with in-app purchase, which is a trend we're seeing anyway.
Dan, what do you see as the economic impact of them essentially being very overt about selling hardware, not software?
Well, I think as Kevin was saying, it's great for the platform because it just kind of establishes that baseline where they understand that the software is just part of the overall package, and that they're going to make their money on their hardware margins. In terms of third-party developers and others, the OS is one thing, making iLife, iWork, and everything free, but it's only free with the new machine. So it's not totally free.
But it's free.
There's a huge backlog of people who would have to pay for it.
The upgrades are free.
And I think what it'll do is it'll certainly kind of, I don't think it'll compel a lot of people to have valuable software that people are willing to pay for. I don't think it's going to damage their businesses at all. I think if you're Evernote or whatever, you have a value proposition. So Apple's value proposition is to say, we feel we're better off by giving this stuff away. So the value of that is, closer to zero. Because, there's not much competition for it at this point anyway. What it might do is force Microsoft to kind of rethink, how it might price whatever it does for iOS.
Well, the problem Microsoft has is that it hasn't yet got much of a hardware business. So almost all of its revenue comes, apart from Xbox, I think, and a couple of other smaller things.
Well, there'll be Nokia.
There'll be Nokia, but so it's pretty hard for Microsoft to react. I don't know that they can genuinely react in a competitive way. And obviously, Apple doesn't threaten the Windows Office franchise at this point, because even though its apps are pretty decent now, they're just not embedded and not going to become embedded. So I think that Microsoft's safe there. The OS is pretty safe for legacy systems. If they can get into the hardware business quickly with Surface and that becomes successful, maybe then they can change their software model.
I think that them copying Google Glass is an indication that they've decided that they really can't beat Apple, and that that Google has basically gotten a free pass with Google Apps and other kinds of attacks on Microsoft, and they're just starting to return the favor. I think it's an indication of giving up on trying to go after Apple.
I think the Office hegemony is falling apart. I think that's as people spend more time on phones and tablets, Office gets much less central to people's lives, and we're seeing a lot of startups who are challenging them as a collaboration platform. Apart from Google and Quip, there's Poetica. There's a bunch of other tools that are being put together to replace the workflows that have been built in Office, many of which are really deeply unfunctional. And Microsoft is trying to compete with that too with Office 365, but even there, that's that's a rearguard action doesn't work in a lot of places.
I can't find the plane. It must be Scoble.
It's
Well,
me,
I
sorry.
think that's that's a challenge for the next CEO of Microsoft.
Do you think there's going to be a next CEO?
Yeah.
I think that's the deal. Yeah.
They have how many billion-dollar businesses? Yeah, somebody has to run it. Oh man, Microsoft makes my head hurt. I don't know what I would do there. By the way, the new maps in the Mavericks didn't have any clue where I was, and it made me turn on Wi-Fi, and I went straight onto my house. So Apple knows my Wi-Fi hotspot belongs here, which is funny.
I had a really weird one. I went to demo last week, and the Wi-Fi thought I was in Portland. Google thought I was in Portland, presumably because that Wi-Fi base station was last used in Portland.
It's funny because I met some guys this week. They're from a new organization called the Wireless Registry, and they're trying to build a registry of MAC addresses of hotspots and locate the hotspots in time and place. And my guess is that probably was a MAC address that used to be somewhere else.
No, I suspect it was a Meraki base station that had been used in Portland Convention Center and then brought down there.
There you go. Yeah, same thing. By the way, Kevin, I wanted to thank you for tweeting my talk from demo. I forgot to say that. It was nice of you.
No problem. I've got a HTML version of it somewhere I should put up for you.
All right. Well, we've got about 10 minutes left here, so
Good talk, by the way.
I'd like to structure this around instead of talking about the relative merits of Apple versus Google, what are we looking at in terms of the death of the PC? Is that really accelerating now? Let's start with you, Robert.
I think it is. I don't know that it's a death, because I don't think the PC is going anywhere. I think if you need Excel or need a laptop, you're going to have something that looks like this, whether it's a Macintosh or a Dell machine or an HP machine. But most people in the world use their phones, and I look at the usage numbers are going toward phone and mobile. And I think as we get watches and glasses and other things that hook off the phone, that usage pattern will accelerate over to the mobile. Certainly, the things that get me excited in the morning are mobile. If you show me a company making software for desktop, it's the same thing as somebody's building for mobile. The mobile one wins almost always in my mind.
Dan Farber, what do you think?
Well, if you look at the numbers, it's a slow death. The numbers suggest that, I believe in this year, according to Gartner, there's 184 million tablets that'll be sold and 303 million PCs, including laptops and desktops. You go out a couple years and it's maybe 250,000 tablets and 250,000 PCs, and you can see the decline of the PC. However, I think it's better to think of it this way, that the PC is not dying, the PC is just transforming. And if you consider a PC to be a screen that has a variety of applications, including business applications, and typically a keyboard, but it can have a keyboard and a touch screen and gestures, that it's just transforming. So the whole kind of idea is like what we're saying is that companies who made their business selling a computer that looked like one of those things, they better change and start building computers that look like something more mobile.
Kevin?
So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
This chart that I'm showing shows that the last time there was more laptops and desktops sold than smartphones and tablets was 2010. And the green and the orange there shows the green is smartphones and the orange is tablets. To Dan's point earlier about tablets will eventually be bigger than both laptops and desktops put together. So death is always relative. It's not absolute. That doesn't say there will be no desktops and laptops. It just shows the trend. And the trend is clearly affecting software as well, because I think the most understated fact about this change is that software that was written for browsers, assuming consumption in a laptop or a desktop, is not going to be mass market software. It still will have a role in various business use cases, but mass market software is going to be apps built for tablets and smartphones, and that's where all the growth is going to be and where all the big new companies are going to be built and are being built. And that's hugely dramatic in its consequences, not just for Microsoft, but for any company that invested in the cloud and the browser as its primary delivery route to market.
Kevin?
Well, I think part of what Apple did today was actually deliver updates to the high end of their computer product line, the PC equivalent laptop and desktop, which will, what we'll see when the next quarterly results come out will be a big change in the proportions of revenue, because they're suddenly selling some really nice high-end machines again. Lots of people go out and buy those. But as Keith says, the absolute number is going down. What we'll see there will be a further shift in market share away from Windows and towards non-Windows devices, with Apple taking again the high end of the PC product line,
Right.
And that's more sort of death of Microsoft coming along.
The introduction of notifications on OS 10 is also a significant.
Yeah, no, that's important. Yeah, they've got the HTML5 notification stuff, and they've got their ability for web apps to send notifications when they're not actually loaded, which is also interesting. And it's an extension, it's similar to the stuff that Google's shipped in their OSs, but Apple shipping that too is important. And having a unified access to that is going to get interesting very soon.
You were going to say something else. I interrupted you with the notifications.
I think there is a tension. But there was a point where you used a PC for everything because that's what there was, and now we have a broader set of places we use things, use these computing devices, and many of them are much more. I've been trying not to say consuming, because we're using them to look up short things, we're using them to read stuff, and we're using them to create media, but we're creating less text with them, less long form stuff, less large construction stuff. And I think that the spreadsheet use case was the dominant, was the reason people bought PCs in the first place, and there are still people who want to do that, but I suspect there will be other things that people come up with that provide the that use this sort of massive change in the number of possibilities of inputting stuff other than a keyboard and mouse that we're seeing in all these devices, and make sense of those. And we haven't worked our way through that cycle yet. And the thing I was saying about the collaboration startups that are displacing Office by providing editing environments that work on tablets and phones, as well as so that you can write a document and have other people mark it up without having to go back to their desktop and use Word and track changes. I think that's going to be significant, because there's a lot more collaboration and editing going on than pure writing these days.
So, sort of a combination of what you just said and what Dan said. I'm using the MacBook Air much more frequently than I have in the last year. I've basically abandoned desktops, laptops. But the reason I'm doing it is because the MacBook Air and OS 10 is becoming very, very similar in terms of the key things, such as notifications.
You mean the iPad and OS 10?
No, I'm talking about the iPad Mini. All I use for the last year has been iPad Mini.
Right.
With
No, you said the MacBook and OS 10. So you mean the convergence between the two?
the conversions,
Yeah.
the conversions between iOS 7 and OS 10
Right.
is allowing me to basically use the MacBook Air as a larger iPad.
Right.
And as a result, I mean, it's not identical. It's not the same. In the release that Robert has just loaded on his machine, it's a different OS, but it is converging rapidly. And as such, that's to Dan's point, which is that we're seeing a slow rolling transformation from one OS to the other. We're moving to iOS 7 across all devices, essentially.
It's interesting. It's interesting if you put a 1 terabyte SSD inside that iPad Air, and let's say you could flip it around and it would dual boot. If it was this way around, it would be OS 10, and the other way around, it would be iOS 7, and it worked with a keyboard. That would be it. You'd have the dream machine right there.
Yeah, but I think that to your point earlier, the keyboard is nothing more than an AirPlay enabled Bluetooth device.
Yeah, I think that.
So yeah, and Tina says she likes the touch keyboard. I don't know what that means. Oh, you mean the one on the iPad? Yeah, I think that the iPad Air is going to cause a resurgence of people using this without a keyboard. So there's a really interesting thing going on here in terms of size, and I just think that it's a Google, Apple universe, and that nobody else has a play. So, Robert, your final thoughts?
I'm gonna buy a lot of Apple gear.
What are you going to buy, in which order?
The iPad Mini, Retina. I'm gonna give my old iPad Mini to the kids. I don't. The problem is, you caught me between product cycles. I have a beautiful iMac system that hasn't been obsoleted yet, and I do a lot of video editing, so I should want one of these Mac Pros. But I really don't ever wait for anything, and I have a 2-year-old iMac, so. And I have a MacBook Pro with a Retina screen already, so I am not in play for one of the new laptops. What else was being sold? That's about it. So I think I'll get one of the iPad minis and wait for the iWatch and for the Apple TV to come next year.
And I think that profoundly important to Apple's future is their ability to continue to innovate. The drummer capability in GarageBand is fascinating.
That was just bizarre.
It's bizarre, but it's also, John Toshek has been, creating music on a variety of devices, including a PC-based recording system and the GarageBand in a number of environments. Being able to basically just slap on a drum track in a sort of intuitive way is something that's going to really be interesting. And the fact that Apple continues to indicate that they will constantly refresh and innovate across their product base, which is just as much, if not more, software than it is hardware. They've essentially decoupled their revenue from how they innovate, and I think it's fascinating, and it will lead, I think, very quickly to what the Apple TV play is, as we see that essentially Apple TV is already in place. There's been a lot of innovation on Apple TV in the last month and a half as different channels start to appear. When we have a Kevin Spacey type producer who starts publishing to Netflix and Apple TV and AirPlay, we're going to have the definition of a new CNN type of news network. That's going to really overturn a lot of things. I know that's dear to the heart of Keith. Do you have any final thoughts, Keith?
Well, one, I'm going to get the Retina Mini as well. I just prefer that smaller form factor for what I do. You just made me realize something, Steve. I think you could express what Apple has done like this. By making all of the consumer software free and the OS free, they've really gone to two sources of revenue. One is obvious, hardware. The other is content. And on iOS, content is apps. On the desktop, content also includes the creation of content, so the pro apps like Final Cut and Aperture and such, but also the App Store. And on Apple TV, it's going to be shows. Plus probably games, and not to mention books and stuff like that. But it's hardware plus content that they're going to make money from, and software is going to be free.
The interface of notifications and Apple TV is ground zero for this next phase. Okay. Dan, did you have any other thoughts? I'm going to wrap it up.
No, I think everybody covered. I just one point that Apple still has a lot of work to do on the services end.
Yeah. Although they seem to have figured out how to be able to serve up a 5 gigabyte file on demand to, I don't know how many people have already upgraded to this thing.
I would say thank you, Akamai.
Yeah, that's a different problem than the collaborative services thing that they've messed up. I think they've got to actually deliver on this collaborative editing thing in a way that doesn't fall over the way the rest of iCloud has.
I think
that's their big challenge.
I think it's a toy. I think it's just a back of the hand to Google, a well-deserved one at that. Robert?
And anything you can do, we can do better. We can do anything better than you.
I think Apple has shored up its position as the BMW or the Tesla, if you want to take it further, of the industry, and that position is not threatened at all. And that position is where the profits are and the high net worth users, and the rest of the industry has to be the Toyota or the Hyundai or something else, and I don't see that changing anytime soon.
I want to say thanks to Rackspace, and particularly Rob Legesse, without which we wouldn't be here. I want to thank NewTek and their TriCaster. Philip Nelson, give me a call, please. I want to thank Joe DeMax, a video producer and developer in England, who has saved our bacon by letting us roll back to a 1953 version of Skype. Which doesn't have the artifacts that we've been battling for the last couple of weeks. And I want to thank our producer and director, Tina Chase Gillmor. I want to thank Dan Farber.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Dan. I want to thank Robert Scoble. I take it back. I want to thank Kevin Marks. Glad you could rejoin us. I want to thank Keith Teare.
Bonsoir, mesdames and messieurs. Thank you.
And there was somebody else I wanted to thank, but I can't remember who it is. So we'll just send out a push notification.
Tina. Forgot Tina.
What do you? Yeah, I said that. What are you saying, Robert? I can't read lips.
I'm muted. I was saying your wife.
Oh no, you guys aren't paying attention, but I am. Okay, thank you very much. I think it's a great day for those of us who love Apple, even when they have a mediocre, somewhat boring set of announcements. It turns out that they're really rather earth-shattering. Right, Kevin?
This wasn't that earth-shattering, but there was a good set of incremental releases.
I think it was more than incremental. I think that it sets the stage for some really great products. And they've basically gotten in line, and they've maxed out my checkbook for the next 3 months. If they keep doing that in 3-month intervals, they win.
All I can say is thank God that Mac Pro wasn't available today.
Yeah, I don't care.
Well, that's the challenge: is are they going to get it out in time to book the revenue this quarter, or
you think
are they going to have to wait for next year?
The iPad Mini is coming at the end of November, so that'll be one hell of a last week in November.
That thing
100
is
bucks.
getting to sell out. The second, well,
Yeah,
I
that's
shouldn't
gonna-
say
that's
this
gonna do really
because
well.
I'm going to be in line too, but they're constrained in terms of their screens. So
Yeah.
get in early and often on the MacBook Mini if that's your choice. I'll probably end up having to get the iPad Air just because the minis are sold out. Such is life.
I'm getting a mini.
You're going to get my mini right here.
No.
See?
Oh, honey, you shouldn't be so disparaging, right?
I'm not. Okay.
All right. See you
Thanks. Thanks to everybody who showed up and all the people that didn't realize we were on the air.
later. Now, are we doing
Tune in
something
on
Friday
Saturday.
too, or just?
No, I think this covers it unless something dramatic happens.
Well, Google's going to have an announcement in a couple days, right?
Why?
I don't know.
Okay.
Nexus 5.
Now, it'll probably be next week. Thanks, Dan. Thanks,
Ciao.
everybody. See you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.